What first date went so horribly wrong that it continues to linger on your mind years later? A few years back, I was just getting out of a long relationship. My boss's sister decided to set me up with one of her coworkers, who we'll call Susan. So she gives me Susan's number, and after a lot of hesitation, I decide to give her a call. She sounds pleasant on the phone and is very open and flirtatious. I ask her if she wants to go get some coffee, and she agrees. We plan to meet at her parents' house in a couple of days and then head out for coffee from there. In the 2 days between making our plans and the actual date, she starts sending me affectionate text messages that always address me as sweetie or hun. I figure that she is just a very affectionate person and try not to read too much into it. When the day of our meeting arrives, I go to pick her up, and she looks stunning. She's a drop-dead gorgeous blonde with a great tan and a nice figure. I, on the other hand, consider myself a bit of a schlub, so I can't believe my luck. As we're getting ready to leave, she suggests taking her car instead of mine. She says it would make her feel more comfortable. Being a good guy, I understand her reasoning and agree. This decision would later come back to bite me. We start driving, and she suddenly tells me, I'm not really in the mood for coffee. Let's get some drinks. Now, I'm not much of a drinker myself. I enjoy smoking Mary Jane, but alcohol has never appealed to me. However, at this point, I decide to go along with it and agree. 15 minutes later, we find ourselves in a brewery and sports bar called BJ's. Anyway, I stick to soda while Susan decides to take things slow by ordering an Adios Mother Efker cocktail to start. Soon enough, we're hitting it off and having a good time. I open up to her about growing up with a terminal illness, and she shares her experience of overcoming ovarian cancer. We discover that we have some common interests in movies and hobbies. Everything is going well until she has her third drink. Damn it. She hisses, ducking down. What? I ask, confused. You see that guy over there? In the booth with the girl in the blue dress? I see the person she's referring to. Well, she continues, I sorta used to sleep with him. I'm taken aback by her blunt honesty. She goes on to explain how she lets people use her as a means to cover up her insecurities. Next thing I know, she's opening up to me like I'm Oprah. She talks about how she self-harms and rolls up her sleeve to show fresh bandages. She goes on about how she has attempted to unalive herself in the past. Then she reaches across the bar to hold my hands, looks into my eyes, and says, you know, I feel a real connection to you. Just then, her phone goes off. She checks her phone and tells me it's a text from her ex-boyfriend, who is in the Marines and is shipping out the next day. Apparently, he's coming over to meet us so she can say goodbye. By this time, I realize I don't want to get involved with someone who's so unstable. I also realize that we took her car, she's now drunk, and we're in an unfamiliar neighborhood. I feel trapped. Soon enough, the ex-boyfriend shows up. He's a big beefy guy in his Marine uniform. Susan starts flirting heavily with him and ignores me. She's already on her 6th or 7th pink panty dropper cocktail. It turns out the ex-boyfriend is also involved in recruitment. Ever think of signing up? He asks me, taking in my nerdy 5'6" frame. Nope, I answer, I have a medical condition. Oh yeah? He asks, what is it? Susan starts to answer for me, ooh, he has cystic fib. I cut her off, I'm allergic to bullets. He doesn't seem impressed, but the drunk woman at the next table shoots vodka out of her nose. Soon, Susan and the beefy Marine go outside to have a cigarette, leaving me to watch the table. I just want to get the hell out of there. I should mention at this point that Susan's day job is as a behavioral therapist for autistic kids. Her supervisor is my boss's sister, and I happen to know that Susan is expected to be at work by 6 a.m. I know this because Susan told me, and my boss's sister also warned me to take care of Susan. By this time, it's already past midnight. Eventually they return from their cigarette break or more likely, some other activity in the back seat. I decide it's time to try and get Susan's car keys from her so I can get back to my own car. Nope. She introduces me to 3 more exes and a guy she practically starts making out with in front of me. I ask her for her keys and tell her it's time to leave. No. No one drives my car but me. Damn it. I weigh my options and for some reason decide that it can't be more than 5 or 6 blocks back to her place, so she might be fine to drive that short distance. And if all else fails, I'll just tuck and roll out of the moving car. I get her to her car, and we start heading back. Suddenly, she looks up in her rearview mirror and screams, cops. She randomly swerves down a side street, zigging and zagging at high speed through residential neighborhoods. I glance behind us only to see no police car. Finally, she decides that we lost them and heads back to her place. You might think the story would end here, but it didn't. As I'm trying to make my getaway, she asks me to drive her back to the bar. If you don't, I'll drive back drunk. Then I'll drive home even drunker and probably get into a crash and die, she tells me. Fine. Screw it. Whatever. I agree to give her a ride. But before we can get into my car, she informs me that she needs to pee. I assume she'll go inside the house, but I'm wrong. This girl hikes up her skirt, pulls her thong aside, squats down, and proceeds to urinate on the sidewalk right in front of me. I immediately spin around, avert my eyes, and mumble an apology, as if her unexpected public urination was somehow my fault. It's okay, she says, you can watch. I don't mind. In fact, I kind of like it. I decline her offer. Finally, I get her into the car and start driving back to the bar. On the way, she grabs my hand and forcefully places it on her crotch. She starts telling me how she feels a real connection to me, saying, I don't want to say soulmates, but have you ever seen the movie The Notebook? I tell her I haven't. Oh, well, it's kind of like that, she says. Throughout this whole ordeal, As my hand is in her crotch, all I can think is, ew, she didn't even wipe. Then she says something that's perhaps the icing on the crazy cake. Big peen, she says, the last time I felt this way about someone, and they didn't feel the same way. She lets out a little laugh. I tried to unalive myself. That's it. I need to get this crazy woman out of my car. I pull into the parking lot, pull up to the curb, and try to get her out as quickly and politely as possible. Can I kiss you? She asks. No, I would feel a little uncomfortable with that, I tell her. Well, what about just one on the cheek? She pleads. I figure, fine, anything to get her out of the car. I lean over and offer my cheek, but she grabs my head and, like a facehugger from Aliens, jams her tongue down my throat. I start to flail around. She finally releases her death grip, probably after depositing some eggs, and exits my car. Before she leaves, she leans down and says, I really messed things up tonight, didn't I? You'll probably never call me again. No, I lie like a steaming pile of shit. I then get the hell out of there. The next morning at work, I tell my boss this crazy story. Suddenly, I receive a call from his sister. Susan didn't show up for work that morning. She isn't answering her phone, and her parents say she didn't come home either. Everyone wants to know what I did with Susan. Great. The crazy girl goes missing, and I was the last person to see her, with her DNA dried on my passenger seat. I'm going to jail. Eventually, she turns up, claiming that her phone had died and that she had spent the whole night at the hospital with her grandfather, who had a heart attack. I know all of this is BS, of course. But whatever, at least I don't have to deal with her. Or so I thought. That's when the voicemail started. Tearful, jarring sobs saying, I just wanted to say hi to you. And hey love, why aren't you answering my calls? And my favorite, what did I do? Finally, about a month later, she gets the hint and leaves me alone. However, that weird date to this day has ensured that I never go on a blind date again. I'd rather be single for the rest of my life.